vitally important for Libya's future, that Libyans won this fight, that Libyans have secured their country, have removed a brutal regime and a brutal tyrant, and that best positions that country and those people as they create their future, and it gives them a better opportunity for a democratic, more free, and more prosperous future. It is obviously also important that the United States was able to do this by sharing the burden with our allies and partners. That allowed the cost to be very low, and most importantly, it allowed us to experience no U.S. casualties.
So would you say this is Obama's way versus Bush's way of going to war?
Well, I'll let others make those kinds of observations. We simply believe that this was the right approach. The president, I remember standing here, and there were a lot of people suggesting that we should be marching into Libya with U.S. troops on the ground. The president didn't believe that was the right course of action. The president believed that it was important to do this collectively. The president believed it was important to take action because there was an immediate need to save lives, large number of lives in Benghazi. And he assessed what was happening on the ground. He assessed the request from the Libyan opposition. He assessed the input from our allies and worked with the United Nations, worked with NATO to take this action. Nora, yes.
It's been almost exactly 7 months since March 19th when the president announced that American and European forces were going to begin these airstrikes, and he faced a great deal of criticism in that time from people on the Hill who said that he was leading from behind and seeking victory on the cheap. How would you respond to those critics today?
I think this is a day not to engage in politics, but to commend the Libyan people on what they've accomplished, and to commend our armed forces and our civilian personnel for the role they played in making Libya.
Validation of the president's foreign policy goals.
Well, I think I've made clear that we believe that the president made the right decisions to work with our allies, to work with NATO, to work with the United Nations, not to do something on the cheap, but because it was the right policy answer to the situation that presented itself. Taking a long-term view about what outcome do you want in Libya. And the president's assessment was that there are no guarantees in these kinds of situations, but that he believed it was important that collectively, working with our allies and partners, that it was worth taking the action to save lives immediately, and to help Libya be in the best possible position to determine its own future, to put it in the best possible position to make that future more democratic, more free, and more prosperous. You know, that was his view, and he wasn't particularly interested in how that looked the first weekend or the second weekend. He was more concerned about how it would look well down the road, and how that would affect American national security interests, and how it would affect Libya's future.
There are reports that a U.S. Predator drone and a French fighter jet were involved in striking Gaddafi's convoy that led to his death. Can you outright say that the U.S. did not kill Gaddafi, or some of his assets did not kill Gaddafi?
I think we're hearing a lot of reports about action. I believe NATO has made a statement about NATO action against a convoy. But I can't elaborate on that. I don't have any information to provide to you on that. I think it's worth noting that there have been a lot of reports, as often is the case in these situations, some of them contradictory, but I would point you to what NATO said.
So how was Gaddafi killed?
Again, I think I would point you to what NATO said, and then point you to the many conflicting reports about what actually happened on the ground. I'll go to...
Can I just follow on Nora briefly by quoting Marco Rubio, who said that you have to give credit where credit is due. He said the British and French led the way. When you hear that kind of suggestion, pardon me, that the president did not lead the way, you say?
Again, Ed, I just think this is not the day for politics. I would I did note that Senator Rubio issued a statement pretty soon after that commending the actions of American servicemen and American civilian personnel, which I think is important. And I think that's the only comment I have on that.
He said the president's policy, he thinks in the end was right, but that it took him too long to get there, basically.
Well, history will judge. I think it's important to ask whether it's that senator or another one, others who are observing this, what action, what alternative action they're suggesting. Were they suggesting U.S. troops on the ground? Were they suggesting unilateral action by the United States of America of using force? Obviously, those were options that were assessed here at the White House. The president chose a different path, working with our allies, taking a lead initially that, as he said today, put Americans in harm's way. There's no question. But it was the kind of operation that gave the Libyan people the best chance of success, ensured the protection of Libyan civilians, and allowed us to work collectively and cooperatively with our partners and allies. That was the approach the president thought that was best, and today is a day where we can celebrate the demise of a tyrant and the potential for a brighter future in Libya.
Last thing, when you said earlier that the prism is what best serves America's interests moving forward in terms of foreign policy, when you intervene and whatnot. This is our first chance to talk to you on camera about last week the president deploying 100 U.S. troops to Central Africa. What is the U.S. national security interest there?
Ed, I would point you to the president's comments, I believe, in an interview he gave to ABC earlier this week, where he was asked about this and addressed it, and I think he said it better than I could.
Elaborate for everyone. Jake is wonderful. But
Yeah, I don't really have anything further to say on that. But State Department, I'm sure, does, or the Defense Department. Yep. And then I'll move around again.
The President talked about hoping to see a quick transition to an interim government and then democratic government. What sort of timeline are you hoping to see, and what sort of benchmarks moving forward over the next several months?
I think this, let me see, I think I might have something on that. We're obviously in an early period here after the demise of Colonel Gaddafi. We have been heartened by the actions and statements, actions taken by and statements made by the TNC and about their commitment to ensuring a positive democratic transition. There's a framework set up that involves declaring liberation and then moving forward from there. I certainly would wait for those actions from the TNC moving forward.
And just going back to Syria quickly, one member of the Syrian National Council was quoted as saying, if the regime, meaning the Syrian regime, continues to be so irresponsible, our main objective is to call for the protection of civilians along the lines of a UN no-fly zone set up in Libya that cleared the way for NATO airstrikes. What's your reaction to that, and is that a realistic request or goal?
I understand the desire to make analogies and comparisons. One thing that we have said from the beginning this whole year is that circumstances in each country is different, and in the region, depending on the country, the circumstances can be different. The action we took in Libya was specific to Libya. It involved an immediate threat of massacre in Benghazi. It involved a request from opposition forces. It involved a coalition of nations that wanted to act, including not just Western nations, but nations in the region, and that fed into the decision-making process here. Every country is different, and I think we have been absolutely clear about our position with regards to Syria, with regard to the Syrian regime. I want to say on your earlier question that at this time of transition, we look to the TNC to move quickly to announce an empowered interim government and begin the formal transition period leading to Libya's first free and fair elections. We also expect the TNC to provide leadership in promoting reconciliation and respect for human rights across Libyan society, and to unify armed groups under clear civilian command and control. Toshi.
Three-day bus tour ended yesterday, and there were several messages from the president, such as those who are incredibly blessed should pay their shares, or he's not the Democratic president, or nor Republican president, he's the president of the United States. So do you feel his message has been well accepted? What's your evaluation of the effectiveness of the bus tour?
Well, the president traveled through North Carolina and Virginia to talk about the need to take action, for Washington to take action right away to help the economy grow and to help the economy create jobs. That's why he put forward the American Jobs Act. That's why he is continuing to press Congress to pass individual elements from the Jobs Act after Republican senators voted in unison to block the passage of the entire American Jobs Act. His point is simply that it's called the American Jobs Act. It's not called the Republican Jobs Act or the Democratic Jobs Act because it is filled with ideas to put Americans back to work, and it's filled with ideas that have traditionally enjoyed the kinds of ideas that have traditionally enjoyed not just Democratic but Republican support. And I want to clarify something that I've said in the past, and just reiterate that yes, the Republicans have put forward plans and proposals that they have called jobs proposals. And there are ideas there that have, some of which have merit. In fact, some of which we have already acted on, including the free trade agreements with Panama, Colombia, and South Korea, including patent reform. And there will be other measures, I'm sure, that we can cooperate with Republicans on. I have not said the Republicans don't have proposals. What I have said is that the Republicans don't have proposals that would help the economy grow or help it create jobs now. And that's not my assessment alone. It is the assessment of the same independent economists who have evaluated the American Jobs Act and said that in the near term it would boost growth by up to 2%. And in the near term it could create up to 1.9 million jobs. That's the comparison. We felt, I know the President felt, that bus trip was very useful, and that his reception was excellent. And there is nothing, I think it is highly valuable for any president to get out in the country and to speak with ordinary Americans, to hear from them the kind of challenges they're facing with this economy. And that's what he did in North Carolina and Virginia. That's what he did in Illinois, Iowa, and Minnesota. And I'm sure he will do it moving forward in coming weeks and months. April.
Jay, the president has been very successful in his efforts to go against terror and capture Osama bin Laden, another leader of al-Qaeda, and now with the death of Muammar Gaddafi. How does this administration reconcile this president, a man of war and a man of peace, after he received the Nobel Peace Prize?
April, I think in answer to that question, it's useful to go back and look at the speech the president gave when he received that prize. And he spoke a lot about both peace and war. And he's commander-in-chief, and he is absolutely committed to protecting American national security interests, to protecting Americans abroad, both in uniform and civilians, and to taking the fight to al-Qaeda and others who are bent on the destruction of Americans and of the United States. He's also said in that speech, we reject as false the choice between our safety and our ideals. You can pursue both, and that balance is something that he tries to achieve as he confronts the many challenges that this country faces, both internationally and at home.
Can you still successfully say that this president is a man of peace, Nobel Peace Prize winner? Can you successfully say he's still a man of peace?
I can say that he's a president and a man who desires peace, but he also has as his highest responsibility and priority the protection of the United States, the protection of the American people. I'll leave it at that. Let me get all the way back. Cheryl.
Thanks. So Jay, getting back to the jobs bill, it's always about the pay-fors, and the Republicans just won't increase taxes. Are there any other pay-fors that would help move this jobs bill